I've always loved winter. There's something magical about the silence of snow-covered streets and the way the cold air bites your cheeks. But after what happened last December, I can't step outside in the cold without feeling like something is watching me. It started on the first night of a major snowstorm. My wife had taken our son to visit her parents in another city, leaving me home alone for the weekend. I didn't mind. I could enjoy the solitude and catch up on work. The forecast warned of heavy snowfall, so I stocked up on food and settled in for what I thought would be a cozy evening. Around midnight, the wind began howling, rattling the windows. I was finishing up some emails when I noticed the temperature in the house had dropped. The furnace was on, but the air felt unnaturally cold. Shrugging it off, I threw on a hoodie and decided to call it a night. As I climbed into bed, I heard a faint sound, like a whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it was too deliberate, too rhythmic. It almost sounded like someone saying, "Come outside." I froze, listening. The whispering stopped, replaced by the eerie creak of snow compacting underfoot. It sounded like footsteps right outside my bedroom window. My heart pounded as I tried to convince myself it was just an animal. Grabbing my phone, I turned on the flashlight and pointed it out the window. The beam of light illuminated the yard, but there was nothing there. Just an expanse of untouched snow. Relieved, I shut off the light and climbed back into bed. But sleep didn't come easily. The whispering had unsettled me. The next morning, I woke to find my bedroom window covered in frost, except for one small patch. Someone or something had drawn a single childlike handprint in the frost, right at eye level. My stomach turned. I didn't have any neighbors close enough to pull a prank like this, and my son wasn't here. Trying to stay rational, I told myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe the frost had formed in a weird pattern. But when I stepped outside to clear the driveway, I saw footprints in the snow leading from the woods behind my house to my bedroom window. They were small, almost like a child's, but with an odd, dragging quality, as if the feet were heavier than they should have been. The tracks stopped abruptly about 10 feet from the window, disappearing into the unbroken snow. No return path, no explanation. That night, the whispers came again, louder this time. "Come outside, please." I stayed in bed, clutching my phone and debating whether to call someone. But who would believe me? A grown man scared of whispers in the wind? Still, I couldn't ignore the way the temperature in the house kept dropping, no matter how high I turned up the heat. At 3 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight and decided to check the yard. Maybe if I faced whatever it was, I'd stop feeling so helpless. I stepped onto the porch, the freezing air hitting me like a wall. The snow crunched under my boots as I followed the small, dragging footprints back to the edge of the woods. The flashlight beam cut through the trees, but the shadows seemed to move, twisting and shifting as if they were alive. I was about to turn back when I saw it. A figure standing among the trees. It was small, like a child, but its limbs were all wrong. Too thin, too long. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if its neck was barely holding it up. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. The figure raised a hand, skeletal fingers stretching toward me, and that's when I heard it. Clear and close this time. "You left me in the cold." A wave of nausea hit me as memories I didn't even know I had came rushing back. Years ago, when I was a kid, I'd been playing hide and seek with my younger cousin, Ellie, during a family gathering at my grandparents' cabin. She'd hidden in the woods, and I'd forgotten about her when the game ended. By the time we realized she was missing, it was too late. They found her frozen to death the next morning. The figure stepped closer, and I saw its face. Ellie's face, pale and frostbitten, with eyes that burned like embers. "You left me," she whispered, her voice like the wind cutting through the trees. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. The flashlight slipped from my hand, and in the darkness, I felt the air grow colder and heavier. Her voice was all around me now. "Feel what I felt." The last thing I remember is the searing cold as she reached for me. When I woke up, I was lying in the snow, frostbitten and shivering, but alive. The footprints leading into the woods were gone. Now, every winter, the whispers return. The cold never feels natural anymore, and no matter how far I move, I always find a handprint in the frost. Ellie hasn't forgiven me, and deep down I know she never will. They always say winter nights are the loneliest. I used to think it was just a poetic way of describing the biting cold and the eerie silence that accompanies it. But last winter, I learned the truth about how unforgiving those nights can be. It started with the storm, a brutal blizzard that rolled in without warning. I had driven up to my family's cabin in the mountains for a weekend of solitude. The cabin wasn't luxurious, but it was cozy, tucked in a clearing surrounded by snow-laden pines. It had been my parents' getaway spot, and I hadn't visited since they passed away. The first day was peaceful. I chopped firewood, drank hot coffee, and watched the snow blanket the world in a pristine white silence. But by nightfall, the wind howled like a wounded animal, shaking the cabin's wooden frame. I stoked the fireplace and tried to focus on my book, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. It began with faint noises, soft, almost imperceptible. A shuffle near the back door, a whisper carried on the wind. I told myself it was just the storm playing tricks on me. But then I heard it clearly, a knock. It was 3 sharp raps on the front door, quick and deliberate. My heart nearly stopped. No one should have been out there in that weather. I grabbed my flashlight and hesitated, listening. The wind roared, but beneath it, I swore I heard faint breathing. "Hello," I called out, my voice cracking. No response. I edged closer to the door, my breath visible in the freezing air. Another knock came, louder this time, followed by a voice, fragile and desperate. "Help me." I flung the door open, and the storm's icy fingers reached in, but no one was there. The porch was empty, the snow unbroken by any footprints. Confused, I shut the door and locked it, telling myself I'd imagined it. The hours dragged on, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. Around midnight, I heard it again, this time from the back door, knocking, followed by the same trembling voice. "Help me?" This time I didn't answer. I crept to the door and peeked through the frosted window. The snow-covered ground was as pristine as before. No tracks, no shadow, nothing. But the knocking didn't stop. It grew more frantic, each rap accompanied by a faint scratching sound, as if something was trying to claw its way in. I backed away, my heart pounding. The knocking stopped abruptly, replaced by silence. For a brief moment, I thought it was over. Then I heard footsteps inside the cabin, slow, deliberate, coming from the upstairs loft. I froze. The loft had only one entrance, the staircase just a few feet away from me. Whoever or whatever was up there hadn't come in through a door. My mind raced as I grabbed the fireplace poker. "Who's there?" I shouted, but the only response was the creak of the wooden floorboards above me. The footsteps moved toward the edge of the loft, directly above me. I held my breath, gripping the poker like my life depended on it. Then, from the loft, a soft, chilling whisper. "Why did you leave us?" I knew that voice. It was my mother's. I didn't know what to do. My rational mind told me it couldn't be her. She'd been gone for years. But hearing her voice, trembling and full of pain, broke something in me. "Mom," I called out, my voice barely audible. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Why did you leave us?" The footsteps descended the staircase, slow and deliberate. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were encased in ice. When the figure finally emerged from the shadows, I dropped the poker. It was my mother or something wearing her face. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale and stretched tight over her bones. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was twisted, cruel. "We waited for you," she whispered, stepping closer. "All these winters. We waited." I stumbled backward, tripping over the rug. The fire in the hearth flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. I scrambled to my feet and bolted out the front door into the blizzard, the cold biting into my skin. I didn't stop running until I reached the car. When I looked back, the cabin was gone. Only an empty clearing remained, covered in untouched snow. I've never gone back. Every winter since, I hear faint whispers on the wind, calling my name, and I wonder if the snow will ever let me forget, or if one day I'll answer.